News First, Newsline Prime with Faraz Shaukatali.
And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Prime, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this evening we're going to discuss something that appears to happen with almost regular occurrence. And that is the public's monies on deposit with various institutions, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, they go down, leaving the public out of pocket. From Golden Key to ETI to the finance, things have kept happening all the time. We've got with us a guest who will perhaps let us get to the bottom of this episode and how the public can recover their money. And indeed, can they recover the money? Here we go. Miss Joan Moonesinghe is here, right here with us. Good evening to you. And thank you very much for coming on our program.
Good evening, Faraz.
And tell me, Ms. Moonesinghe, what is happening that is wrong, obviously wrong, that the public believe various financial institutions, place their faith in them, obviously attracted by not only the interest rate, but by the assurances given in their marketing and so on and so forth, word of mouth, all sorts of things. And then all of a sudden, they go out of business. Yeah. And what recourse is available to the public?
Yeah. First and foremost, Faraz, I need to tell you that these institutions are licensed, regulated financial institutions.
Right.
And the directors and senior management of these institutions are entrusted with a responsibility, a corporate responsibility like no other, the fiduciary responsibility,
right,
which is a responsibility of trust.
Right.
And what is that responsibility of trust? That they are entrusted with public funds.
Right.
The licensing authority tells the public, we have assessed these institutions and their management to be worthy of your trust. Go and put your money there. Then automatically it falls on the licensing authority to ensure that these institutions are safe and sound. These are not Ponzi schemes.
No.
These are licensed, regulated financial institutions.
Right. And so therefore, and who is the licensing regulating authority?
The licensing authority is obviously the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Right. Because I mentioned the Golden Key Company at the beginning of the program, I think we better mention here that Golden Key was not licensed. It didn't come under the purview of the Central Bank.
It certainly didn't, because it made out that it was not accepting public deposits.
But they were.
In the guise of various
in the guise of other things.
Exactly.
And okay, just going back in history.
Yes.
At the time, could they have done anything about it, the Central Bank?
Well, they could have investigated it further.
Yeah.
And it was very obvious that they were accepting deposits.
Right.
But I suppose there was a lot of pressure brought on at that time, and
by who?
Extraneous forces, always, and
dark forces.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they were allowed to carry on
to the cost of several thousands of depositors.
But most of them, and they were lured by very significant rates of interest.
And now that's the problem here.
Yes.
That's the other problem. In other established markets, you'll find that the soliciting of funds cannot be done without the approval of the financial regulator. That these advertisements and so on must be. Our advertisements are full of companies offering you all sorts of jolly investments in trees, in rambutan, in God knows what.
Yes.
And I wonder whether all those companies are regulated by the central bank. Would they be?
Certainly not. Certainly not. And this is the lacuna in the law where companies that are not licensed and regulated are allowed to advertise, to solicit public patronage. That should not be allowed. And the press should also be informed that they cannot print any advertisements.
Okay, this is going in all sorts of directions. Now, what about companies that are in so-called unsecured lending? Usually it's done over the telephone. There are companies that do that. But now when I made an inquiry from the central bank, they told me that they don't regulate them, and therefore there's nothing that they can do. Okay, but who regulates them? Because the interest rates are extortionate. It's around 300, it can be, the APR can be around 365%.
Even more than that. Even more than that.
Because if you add the fees, the setup fees, then it can nearly double.
Yeah. So this goes down to market conduct.
Right.
And the central bank is responsible for market conduct in the financial system.
Yeah.
And therefore they cannot allow companies with offering loans to the people at such exorbitant rates to operate in the...
This is precisely what the British regulator did. In the interest of market conditions.
That's right.
They stepped in and looked in at Wonga, which is a payday lender.
That's right.
And they made them repay some money.
Exactly.
But eventually, of course, Wonga went down.
Yes, yes. And they were penalized by the FSA because under market, on their responsibility for market conduct.
Right.
So the same thing applies here. We cannot wash our hands off and allow the public to be fleeced by these people.
So what you're saying is that the central bank, the regulator, or the regulatory part of the central bank, needs to take their blinkers off and look at it with wide-angled lenses.
Of course. But the angle that central bank is taking is that they don't use public deposits and therefore they are not responsible. They're using their own funds.
Yes, but it causes a wide impact.
That's right. That's right. It is, you know, I mean, people are lured into this cheap kind of finance, finance that is easily accessible, but at exorbitant rates.
Indeed.
You know, so you cannot allow that to happen.
Now, even microfinance is, okay, it's not 365%, but it's still high.
Still high. Especially when you consider the sector that is being financed.
Right.
It's far beyond their means. And I think there are now, again, new initiatives to regulate the microfinance sector. So I don't know how they're going to decide on a reasonable, affordable rate of interest.
But, Joan, the central bank is often portrayed as the place where there's a lot of professionalism. And most people tend not to argue with that. My question is that if there is so much of professionalism, where is their proactivism then? Why have they not acted in a proactive way? Are they waiting for payday lenders in this country to go flat on their face after having put thousands of people into misery by charging extortionate rates? The Golden Key was one, the Finance is another, and ETI.
ETI and the Finance were regulated, licensed regulated finance companies. But unfortunately, they were so badly managed. Most of the money was used within the group's interests.
Right.
And that's where they went wrong. But these companies have been insolvent for a very long period of time. Now, if you take the notice the central bank has published on the finance, in 2008, it says very clearly, financial within because of the failure of a number of financial institutions within the group in 2008. So from 2008 till 2000 now we are in 19. It's over 10 years.
It's over 10
years. Yeah. I mean, what were they doing?
So they've been insolvent for more than 10 years.
10 years. And
how have they managed to circumvent the corporate laws and carry on trading.
They were artificially propped up by the central bank, you know, and they were allowed to accept deposits, although they were insolvent. It was not published. That information was not available to the public. Their names were published just with the other strong finance companies and licensed finance companies. So people looked at the newspapers. I think that's an annual or biannual publication, and they went and transacted with them. So that means they increased their deposit liabilities, even though they were insolvent, and which meant that they got in deeper and deeper into trouble. Operational expenses. And now if you take the finance, they were operating with a negative interest income. 14% was a negative interest income. That means their interest expenses were far in excess of their interest income. So that means they increased their operational losses.
So is that why they would have dipped into the deposits, which they're not supposed to?
Yes, of course, and this is what happened. And you know, so now the central bank says it's now they have taken a decision on the 15th of February 2019 that we have to safeguard the interests of the depositors. Now, why wait so long? This should have happened. And
what's the alternative?
If you don't, within a reasonable time, if you don't find a viable investor to recapitalize it, and the central bank is not willing to recapitalize it, then you liquidate it and trigger the claims of these depositors under the deposit insurance scheme. Now, the deposit insurance scheme was established in 2010, and they allowed it to collect some funds with the premium, and from 2012, I believe, compensation payments would have been made.
Right.
So if they had in 2012 liquidated these companies, the liability at that time, the covered deposits were only 200,000. So the claims on the deposit insurance scheme would have been much less, right, at 200,000. Later, I think 2014 they increased it to 300,000, and I think 2018 they increased it to 600,000. So that means.
So if they have to pay out now, they'll pay out at what price?
600,000.
That is the final figure.
That's the final figure.
So 600,000, up to 600,000. If you had deposits of up to 600,000, you'd get paid in full.
Fully paid. You're fully paid. And
but what's the mechanism?
No, just a minute. 93% of depositors are covered.
93% of the finance depositors
are covered.
So will be covered because 93% of the people
have
with deposits
600,000
had not more than 600,000.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. So why restructure?
Does that only refer to capital or plus accumulated interest?
It's the capital. It's the capital.
Right.
So then why restructure for 7%? I mean, you have to take these institutions out of the system.
Yes, that doesn't seem right.
Exactly. Exactly. So why waste all the resources and the time?
I'm supposed to be asking you why. I mean, why? Actually, why? Why are they doing this?
I just can't understand, because, I mean, here they very clearly say that they made all the several efforts were made to identify prospective investors and to restructure the company. Such efforts have not materialized yet. So this is from 2008, right?
So they're still waiting.
They're still waiting. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is at the expense of the legitimate claims of the larger number of depositors. They need to get their principal back. They're servicing the interest, but they need to get their principal back. You know, because they can invest that principal. If they had invested that money so many years ago, look at the interest foregone on that, the opportunity cost of that.
Okay.
You know.
Now it could be argued that they didn't pay out 200,000, but now if they are to do that, they'll get 600,000.
Yes.
But what's the mechanism, Joan? How do they start paying this out? What's the step?
As I told you, first they have to be insolvent, which they have been for so long. Then
so they must officially declare insolvency.
Then they have to take the decision to liquidate the company.
Right.
As soon as they liquidate, then I think within 6 months they start paying the depositors, the covered depositors.
That's irrespective of the assets of the company.
No, it's nothing to do with the assets.
It's nothing to do. It's only purely an insurance.
From the fund, from the deposit insurance fund. And the fund now today, I think, the last published accounts of the fund, I think they are just below 50 billion.
Right.
So they have enough money to pay it. And after all, this is the safety net mechanism that consolidates the financial system of this country. Indeed. And enhances depositor confidence. Right. So why are we waiting? I mean, it's not right by these depositors.
It's the SMS number is 0772 300 305. 0772 300 305. You can send us your SMSs. You can contact us after the program with your story, and we'll be happy to look at it. And we'll be happy to answer your questions if you send us an SMS. 0772 300 305. It's live right here. Please don't try to telephone that number now. So for us, by our inaction and procrastination,
yes, we are acquiescing in sheltering those who have willfully and blatantly defrauded these depositors.
So what penalties await those directors who dip into the pot of deposits that belong to the depositors?
No, this is a breach of fiduciary responsibility, which has to have the most, I mean, you have to deal with them. You have to be adjudicated upon and prosecuted. All these people, I think to date, we have not taken action against a single director.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, some people involved in the Golden Key matter were released from remand on the basis that they would be able to help an expeditious settlement. I'd like to know whether all the depositors have been now paid.
No.
And if so, how long did this expeditiousness take place in?
I think it is quite unfair by the depositors who had their money in licensed regulated companies for the institution that was not regulated or licensed, for those depositors to have been paid over the claims of these depositors. I mean, these depositors have been languishing without their deposits for over a decade. And then the Golden Key collapses, and immediately there's a lot of pressure brought to pay those. I think they have got a minimum of about 40%.
That's right, 41%.
And most of those depositors.
But Joan, that 41%, if I'm not mistaken, the cash component was rather little. I think, because they also offered them shares. Unfortunately, I wrote about this extensively, but
I'm not sure about that. But
it was about 41%.
Yeah, but you must understand that those depositors had already, many of them were able to recover their principal on the interest that they had earned. They were paid about 40% interest, the Golden Key depositors. So many of them have recovered their principal. You know, so I mean, I don't know why such a lot of effort was put into the Golden Key when there were so many other failed financial institutions where the depositors didn't get anything.
That's a
travesty of justice.
This is a serious matter that we're talking about, and it's time now to go for a break. Don't leave us. After all, this is Newsline Prime. Okay. We'll be back soon after this.
Newsfirst, Newsline Prime with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Welcome back to Newsline Prime. We're in conversation with Joan Moonesinghe, and the topic of discussion is the depositors who've lost monies from various institutions. Now then, Joan, why is it that when the central bank has a seemingly easy option or a very fast-track method of settling these depositors, why are they almost hell-bent on continuing with the misery that these people have been put through when they lose their deposit? I mean, it can't be fun when you lose your deposit.
No, and I don't think any resolution authority has the legal or moral right to wait 10 years to resolve an issue. Then what happens to the legitimate claims of the depositors under the deposit insurance scheme?
10 years is a long
time. I mean, I think there should be some amendment brought to some law either the Deposit Insurance Scheme or whatever it is, or in the Finance Business Act, to prevent the central bank from taking so long. Nowhere in the world do regulators give themselves so much time. I mean, for instance, in India.
Why do you think that they're doing this?
I don't know. In all fairness, I must say that the present governor and a few members of the Monetary Board inherited these problems, because they came on board very recently. And I think the governor has taken a lot of effort to liquidate at least 2 companies, and take them off the system. At least that has happened. So these decisions should have been taken long ago.
But they were busy with the bond.
No, not with the bond. It is just that they were procrastinating, and I think the senior management of the central bank needs to get out of their comfort zones and take hard decisions where you decide.
What's precluding them, Joan?
Because liquidation is a lot of work.
It's laborious.
It's very laborious. It's a lot of work. I know how we handled Pramukha.
Right.
I mean, none of them want to do it.
But go back to Pramukha. What happened there?
We studied these investment proposals. They didn't work, and the governor at that time decided that we are going to liquidate, and that's what we did. We paid off the covered depositors.
What did the depositors get?
I think at that time they got 300,000.
Right. Okay.
And we paid about 85% of the depositors.
Right.
And then the rest was transferred into converted into equity in the savings bank. There was a savings bank that was established for that purpose.
Right.
But the majority of depositors were paid off. And that is the objective of the deposit insurance scheme. It negates the objective of the deposit insurance scheme if you don't use this as a safety net mechanism. What are you telling the public? You're telling the public, come on, don't worry. Even in this press notice here, they refer to the deposit insurance scheme. So then why are you waiting? You're still studying restructuring proposals.
Have you been to see the governor and asked him?
No.
Perhaps I should. We should, as media.
I think the depositors should, but I think they're playing on the ignorance of the depositors. They don't realize.
And that brings us nicely into financial literacy. Do you think the central bank is spending enough money on financial literacy? I know that sometime back in the last government, some money was given by the SEC to promote wider ownership, share ownership. But that money went off to some other country to pay for some dancing troupe or something like that. But anyway, do you think that the central bank, is there a budget for them to do this?
Financial literacy, I think the governor has taken the initiative to set up, I can't remember what he called it, some financial literacy task force or something like that.
Right.
He's really committed to
because
enhancing financial
out
literacy.
In these, mainly in rural areas, who are paying extortionate interest rates, like 40% and above, and under harsh conditions. And it is actually the risk collateral, but it's the stuff you buy, whether it be a television or a cupboard or a bed.
That's right.
And I think the ease of getting the money attracts people to take these on. The penny drops about a month later when you have to pay
That's right. And now we are going into digital, right?
Yeah.
And that's even worse. Digital financial literacy.
Right.
I mean, that is also very important.
Right.
Because how many people have the digital savvy to understand, the digital process? I wrote an article very recently on the need to enhance digital financial literacy. There are very senior retired government servants who don't even want to use their credit cards, the various mobile apps that are available, because they are so afraid, to commit their money to these.
Their fear may well be well founded, because we had recently people trying to. Well,
right.
They got some amounts of money from the ATMs.
I know, but if we are going digital, then we need to enhance the digital financial literacy, right? I mean, across the board, and you can't leave a segment out.
And what's the case for a financial services authority? who will oversee this whole thing, including people trying to do dodgy businesses by asking unsuspecting people to invest in trees and
you're talking of the structure of the regulatory authority, but now we already have a regulatory authority in the central bank, so that is policy decisions that have to be taken.
But when you call them up and say, my investment in rambutan trees didn't go well, they say, oh, well, we don't know about that.
I know there are a lot of needs to be done, and I guess sooner or later these things will have to be given attention, the serious attention of the...
But this matter of the depositors' insurance scheme,
yes,
surely that's something that should be widely advertised instead of it appearing on the small print of your deposit note. Because
they are asking the people to to have confidence in these restructuring proposals, because 93% of the depositors are covered by the deposit insurance.
Right.
So then why don't you pay them off? And the most important thing is to cleanse the system of these insolvent companies. They have to exit the system. There's no doubt about it. Especially these large companies like the ETI and the finance. And then proceed simultaneously to prosecute the breach of fiduciary responsibility. That is very important. That is because fiduciary responsibility in deposit-taking financial institutions is sacrosanct. It's the responsibility of trust, and that has been breached. And what are you doing about it? Nothing. Now here they say several companies, financial institutions within the group, we don't even know what the total liability of those financial institutions in the group were. All those institutions failed. Where is the transparency? Where is the accountability? I mean, these are all licensed, regulated financial institutions. No one knows what is the total liability of those institutions. And the directors are scot-free. Absolutely. No action has been taken. And you take the case of the US, where Madoff was sent for 150 years. His personal assets were pursued. They recovered billions.
Indeed.
To the extent of selling his wife's mink coat, their yachts. Then they went after his son, and who committed suicide finally. You know, to that extent they went. That's what I'm saying. That's the expertise we need. They can ask the US to help them to pursue the assets of these directors and to prosecute them in the same manner, with the same vigor that they did prosecute Madoff. I mean, even for 150 years, these guys haven't gone in for anything.
It appears to me that in Sri Lanka, the vigor to pursue people only happens in a political arena, when one political party goes after their opponents with a vigor that is really, which we need to address issues, real issues like these.
Yes. I'm not even sure whether the names of these directors have gone to the Credit Information Bureau. Now that's something that they must do, because most of these people who owe money to the finance, I'm sure, are floating in the financial system doing their own thing, where they owe millions of rupees to the finance.
The situation
in ETI, of course, they help themselves. But in the finance, there are lots of people who had borrowed from the finance and who have not repaid the money. And that's why the company went down.
It's a dire, grave situation. Joan Moonesinghe, thank you very much for being on Newsline Prime. We appreciate your time, we appreciate your efforts, and we hope that long may you continue with your articles and so on, because it is a light in a very dark world. Thank you very much, Joan Moonesinghe.
Thank you, thank you.
And that's the way it was on Newsline Prime. Take care, have a great evening, and God bless.
News First, Newsline Prime with Faraz Shaukat Ali.